bottom of that exhibit. And then the other piece, which joins it at the bottom of the triangle, is about 3.415 acres. And it is on, as I said, on the south side of Graham Road, where Graham Road is now starting to turn east. Next slide, please. So the site has been, or that area has been developing, as you are most aware, with a number of industrial uses. And in fact, just north of the site, the larger triangular piece, it was rezoned last year to I-2 industrial. That's where a company called Lions Head Metals is going to build its new headquarters. And then to the east of the site, it's all that property is zoned I-1. On the west of the site is I-65. And you can see that that area between Allen Road to the north and down to where Graham Road heads south, which is the border of this site, it's filling in with I-1 industrial uses. And what it is currently zoned is a suburban fringe zoning. And we don't think that that's a likely, a compatible type zoning for that site anymore, given what's happening to the north, which you know I-2 is going in for Lions Head Metals, and given how this is filling in to the east with I-1 uses, it just doesn't seem consistent or compatible to have a suburban fringe zoning on that site. And our petitioner's projected use would be to rezone this to I-1 to have some industrial office flex space up in the triangular portion of the site that borders I-65, and then have a very small commercial light industrial kind of use on this portion of the site, the 3-acre site that borders Graham Road in the south.
Trent Polar
has left the meeting.
And have a 2-acre site for that they would dedicate at no cost for a fire station site for Greenwood. The current zoning of suburban fringe is a type of zoning that's really designed to permit agricultural uses so long as the land around it is devoted primarily to agricultural uses. That's just not the case anymore, as you can see from this exhibit. Next slide, please. So this slide is looking north on Graham Road and into the site where Lions Head Metals will build their building. And you can see, I believe that's a fruit distributor building up there in the background that's been recently completed. Next slide, please. That's looking south and east where Graham Road starts to turn, and over sort of in the left background of that photograph is where the fire station site and the smaller office industrial building would go in, under petitioner's proposal. Next slide, please.
That's normally called a
Thank you, Dale. So that's a photograph of the site where the fire station site would go. That's on the south side of Graham Road, looking south-southeast. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, the suburban fringe use, which is what is currently zoned now. So you can see on the right-hand side where the site is, and it's a type of zoning that is a type of zoning designed to permit agricultural uses, so long as that the land around it is devoted primarily to agriculture. You can see, members of the commission, that that's just not the case anymore with all that light purple I-1 zoning to the east and north, and then even I-2 zoning to the north. This is changing to a industrial type use. Next slide, please. So this is how they would propose to lay it out. The larger site would be zoned for light industrial. And again, it's not a large site, so you couldn't have any major distribution buildings on that site. The site's too small for that. And then down in the south corner, the site would be broken into 2 parcels, a small light industrial site, and then the fire station parcel that would be given to the town of, or city of Greenwood for a fire station. It'd be dedicated as part of this rezoning. The next slide, please. So in the detailed statement of reasons, we just outlined that we desired to ask the Plan Commission to rezone this to an I-1 zoning classification to allow for office industrial flex space. We indicated that we were going to dedicate a portion of the site to the city for development of a new fire station. And we asked that the commission and the council amend the Greenwood Code to remove the site from the South I-65 Worsville Overlay Zone District, but that it would be developed in accordance with the requirements of the I-65 Corridor Overlay Zone District. And we found that we noted that we believe the request complies with the comprehensive plan, because even though the plan recommends office uses for the site, this would have office uses in it, but everything else around it is turning to I-1 and I-2. Next slide, please. And we believe that this site and this proposed use and rezoning complies with the current conditions of the site. That's what I was mentioning about the industrial uses coming into this area. We believe it's the most desirable use for this area. An I-1 use will most certainly increase the tax base on this site substantially, other than the fire station site. We don't believe it will affect property values in a negative way because it's surrounded by I-1 uses. And in fact, we expect the rezoning would increase the property values of that site. And we believe that with light industrial development on these two sites and a fire station, that'll be consistent and compatible with the existing buildings around that area. And that is an earmark of responsible development and growth. Next slide, please. Members of the commission, after working with staff, we entered into a number of commitments, and I won't read them all to you
has left the meeting
or go through them in exact detail, but I think that it's important to hit the highlights. The highlights are that loading berths that face I-65 Worsville Road, they would be screened by landscape berms and plantings. The building materials commitment would eliminate the possibility of having, say, an all metal warehouse, because the building materials are limited to masonry with architectural features, and they're in detail. These are, we've gone over these with the planning staff. There would be no outside storage on either of these sites, so all the storage and work would be within the enclosed buildings. Next slide, please. Things like there's finished facade commitments as to vertical planes, breakup of architectural treatments, and trash enclosures and trash compactors would have to be enclosed with building materials that would match the primary building materials. Next slide, please. There are detailed lighting requirements as to what types of lighting could be used, and the as an example, LED lights and halide lights, and also development standards as to what type of pole and wall pack light fixtures could be used. Next slide, please. These commitments outline the types of signage that can be put on there in these two sites. As an example, pole signs would be limited to 10 feet. Next slide, please. This developer, members of the commission, has been involved in significant roadway improvements, substantial roadway improvements on the roads in this area. And this slide is designed to show the commission some of those roadway improvements that have been done by this petitioner and dedicated to Greenwood. As an example, those blue squares up at the top of the exhibit at Main Street and then down at Collins Road and Graham Road indicates signalization that has been installed by the petitioner. The areas in red show roads that have been widened or improved, including installation of accel and decel lanes. There's also been construction of a new public right-of-way that was dedicated to Greenwood. That I believe that's south of that building that's sort of in the center of the site. The roads have been resurfaced in certain areas, certain sections of Collins Roads from Worthville Road to Allen Road. There was an extension of Graham Road to the east from Collins Road as new public right-of-way. That's down in that red line extending to the right of that signalized intersection. And so the petitioner has spent about $4 million and purchased land for right-of-way extensions from the school corporation and dedicated to Greenwood. They've spent about $4 million in roadway improvements. And in connection with this case and the next case, plan to spend about another over $1 million in roadway improvements to Mill and overlay Graham Road from Allen Road, which is near the sort of center of that exhibit, all the way up to Main Street. So there's been significant expenditure by this petitioner on improving roads in connection with this development. The petitioner is planning on spending another over $1 million to, as I said, improve Graham Road between Collins and Main. And as part of this petition, would propose to dedicate that 2-acre site to the Greenwood Fire Department for their use. Next slide, please. So in summary, we respectfully suggest to the Planning Commission that this zoning is compatible with the industrial uses north and east and northeast of the site and is an appropriate use for a site with this kind of I-65 frontage. We believe our statement of reasons supports the rezoning. This will allow for substantial capital investment and bring jobs to this area. The staff report reviewed this carefully, we believe, and they recommend a favorable recommendation of this petition. They believe that the use and rezoning of land with I-1 industrial uses is consistent with the surrounding land use patterns. They asked for several commitments, which we agreed to. And lastly, we've already invested, my client's invested approximately $4 million in off-site roadway improvements. And in connection with these petitions, if they are so approved, is committing to invest another approximately $1.1 million in off-site roadway improvements and to dedicate an approximate 2-acre site to Greenwood for a new fire station. We again thank you for your time in these extraordinary circumstances and respectfully ask that you give this favorable consideration. Thank you.
Hi, Narinder Kaur
Has joined the meeting.
All right, anybody that's on, please mute for any background noise. All right, thank you, Mr. Tui. Any remonstrators to speak to this petition?
I have a question on behalf of the residents of Homecoming.
Wait, hold on. We need to swear you in.
Go ahead.
Hey, what is your name and address for the record, please?
Michael Reed, 741 Fireside Drive, Greenwood.
Thank you. And do you swear under penalties for perjury the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
Do.
Thank you.
So
All right, go
I
ahead,
have a
Ms.
question for the petitioner.
Okay, go ahead.
For those of us that are on the phone and cannot see the slides, is any of the land in question being discussed east of Collins Road?
You can go ahead and answer that, Mr. Tui.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's the only question I had.
Okay. Any other remonstrators?
I do have a question, sir.
State your name and address for the record and be sworn in.
I will. Randy Gooden, 1157 Central Park Boulevard South, Greenwood, Indiana, 46143.
Go ahead, Mr. Go ahead, Laura. Swear him in.
Do you swear under penalties for perjury the testimony about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr.
Well, good
Gooden.
evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the council. I just wanted to say, Mr. Tui, I salute you, sir. I really think that this is good use of this for this zoning, knowing what's been in there, what's been approved in that area, and having the land for use by the fire department, which this southeast side of Greenwood has been looking for some time. So for what it's worth, Mr. Tui, I support this, and I want the council to know that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gooden. Anyone else?
Yeah, my name's Doug Bumbelow, and I live at 2932 Treehouse Pass, Greenwood 46143. I just wanted to stay for,
Wait a minute.
you know, I'm
Wait. Hold on, Mr. Ray. We
Go
need to
ahead.
get you sworn in. We need to get you
All
sworn
right.
in.
Do you swear under penalties for perjury the testimony about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you.
I
Okay,
just
go
want to
ahead.
point out that those slides were a bit misleading because there is a farm on the south side of Graham Road right there, and there's a religious facility right next to the top of the triangle that you're talking about. So these are not on the west side and the south sides of Graham Road. It's not I-2 until you get up to Collins Road. I mean, it's just not true. It's you know what it is east of Graham Road, and you know north of Graham Road. I give you that, but that's not the case in the areas that you're talking about. And that's all I wanted to bring out, because those slides are misleading, because it totally does not depict Taylor Farm that's right there, or the Sikh religious facility that's right there. None of that is I-2.
All right, we'll address that in a minute. Any other remonstrators?
Stephen Boal, 2946 Holiday Way, Greenwood, Indiana 46143.
And can you raise your right hand, please?
Yep.
Do you swear under penalties for perjury the testimony about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
I actually had a question for the petitioner as to, I do support that area for being zoned what it is, because since the warehouse is already over there, but do they have any construction plans or buildings? I thought he said like multiple small shops and work-in warehouses or something like that. Or what was the plan for that triangle? Can Mr. Tui clear that up? I thought he said it was going to break, it's not going to be one tenant all the way. It could be broken down into multiple. Is that only commercial? Is it going to be like, the point that I'm trying to get to, is it going to be small warehouses with one dock each, or so on? Or are they plan on having like a single tenant over there?
All right, we'll address that. I want to make sure I get through all the remonstrators, and we'll have Mr. Tui address that. Is there anybody else to speak as a remonstrator? All right, seeing none, we'll close. Give Mr. Tui a 5-minute rebuttal.
Yeah, I'd like to speak.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Patrick Jenart. I live at 712 Fireside Drive, Greenwood, Indiana, 46143.
And do you swear under penalties for perjury the testimony about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you.
So I know this area pretty well. I know this area very well. I run up there almost every day. I bike out there a lot. Both of these properties, it makes sense to rezone them. It really does. Based on the current development of the city, the first two in question makes absolute sense. They sit next to I-65, and based on the warehouses that have grown in there. My concern is on Graham and Allen Road, we need to get a signal in there. When Amazon changes traffic, and when Amazon does shift change, it's sketchy. It's very sketchy trying to turn onto Allen, and traffic is just nuts. But rezoning those two pieces makes perfect logical sense as the city expands both south and east. As we go into the next piece of property, I'll have a different opinion. I'll save that for later. But those two pieces, it makes perfect sense. We just got to monitor the traffic patterns and get a signal up there. That's all I have for this one.
All right. Anyone else? All right, Mr. Tui. We had one question. I'm sure you wrote them down, so go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope I did get them down. The question I had was, the first question was any land east of Collins, and that answer was no. I answered that.
Right.
Then the appreciated Mr. Gooden's comments. Mr. Goodlow sort of indicated he thought that the slides were misleading. And I agree with Mr. Goodlow's characterization of the other uses. He did mention that there was a church north of this site, or a religious facility. I completely agree with him on that. But he would also have to agree with me that between this site and that church is going to be the Lions Head Medical or Lions Head Metal buildings. That's in that purple zoned area, dark purple. So there's going to be a very, what I think is a good corporate industrial use between our site and that religious facility. As to Mr. Bual is how I wrote the name down.
Mr. Ball.
Mr. Ball's concern about types of uses. We don't have an exact use now for these two sites other than the fire station site, but it would be limited to uses in the I-1 district. Those sites are so small. I don't think there'll be a series of buildings with just one warehouse or one dock to them. And there's not enough room, enough acreage for large warehouse distribution uses. So we don't have any users yet, tenants or prospective purchasers, but we'll limit the uses, of course, to what's permitted in the I-1 use. And then the last gentleman, I believe, said he makes sense to rezone this. He indicated he thought it would be a good idea to have a signal at Collins and Graham, if I heard him correctly, and
Allen Road.
I'm sorry,
Graham and Allen, I believe.
Graham and Allen, I agree with you. And it's my understanding at this point the town's engineers are saying that it may not be warranted. We're certainly up for listening to that as the traffic builds in that area.
Okay. Is that it, Mr. Toohey?
That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any of the remonstrators? We got 5 minutes of rebuttal. Anybody want to add any comments? All right. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and open it up for questions and comments to the commissioners. I did have one question. I think I seen where they've asked to have this property pulled from the Worthville overlay, but will comply with all the I-65 overlay. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else with questions or comments?
Yeah, Mr. Tui, will this development affect the East Grassy Creek area of this property at all?
Mr. Smith, not that I know of. I don't know of any effect it will have on the East Grassy Creek area.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? You're muted. You're still muted.
How's that?
There you go.
I've got a defective mouse. Sorry about that. Please remember, in rendering a decision for a recommendation to the Common Council on this rezoning petition, to pay reasonable regard to the following criteria. 1, the comprehensive plan. 2, the current conditions and the character of current structures and uses in each district, the most desirable use for which the land in each district is adapted, conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction of Greenwood, and responsible development and growth.
Okay. Seeing that, there's been a motion prepared. Anyone? lot of people muted, so if you're trying to read the petition, I'm not hearing you.
Trent, this is Daniel.
Uh-huh.
All right. I move that the petition for a zone map change to remove approximately 12.164 acres located at 1763 South Graham Road and between I-65 and Graham Road within the city of Greenwood, Johnson County, Indiana, from the South I-65 / Horseville Road Overlay Zone District and rezone it from SF Suburban Fringe use to I-1 Industrial Light use as set forth therein, receive a favorable recommendation from this commission to the Greenwood Common Council, and that the same be certified to the Greenwood Common Council in the form presented with the following commitments, and that would be the commitments as presented.
I think there was 5. Yeah, I think there was 5 of them.
And I believe you, Trent, you mentioned one other commitment as well, or was that a restatement of the petition?
That was just a question and a restatement. Okay, I have a motion.
Second by Monica.
Okay.
Hi, Mr. McCall.
Has left the meeting.
I got a motion by Mr. Johnston and a second by Monica. All those in favor of that motion, I'll take a roll. Mr. Shell. Mr. Shell. Okay. Mr. Downs. Mr. Downs. Micah.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Gardner.
Hi.
Mr. Schrader. Mr. Johnson. And I'm in. So motion carries 8-0. Good luck. All right. Second order of business.
Mike Reed.
Has
Yes.
left the meeting.
PC 2020-041. Again, GLA warehouse rezone. And I believe we have the same highway petitioners and remonstrators. So, Mr. Toohey, I'll have to have you sworn in again. This is a public hearing. Again, 15 minutes for petitioner, 15 remonstrator, 5 rebuttal for each. Go ahead, Mr. Toomey. Toohey, I'm sorry.
Oh, do you swear under penalties for perjury the testimony about to give is true to the best knowledge?
Are you muted, Mr. Toohey?
I apologize. I do. It was.
Okay. Go ahead and, name and address for the record and make your presentation.
Thank you, members of the Planning Commission. Again, for the record, my name is Brian Toohey. My address is 50 South Meridian. I'm here with David Duncan of GLA Properties and
Cynthia Allen.
Has left the meeting.
And Courtney Lehman, I believe, is joining us also. Again, thank you for hearing this case in these extraordinary circumstances. And thank you to Dale for helping me with the PowerPoint presentation and presenting these slides. So the, let me get the right PowerPoint.
Has joined the meeting.
So members of the commission, the first slide shows that this site is a 98-acre site, which we are requesting being zoned to the I-1 Light Industrial District. It's currently zoned, I believe it has 2 zonings, suburban fringe and agriculture. And we're asking that to be zoned to the I-1 Light Industrial zoning classification. We're also asking, like in the previous petition, that the site be removed from the South I-65 Worsville Road overlay zone, but that it would be by commitment developed in accordance with the I-65 corridor overlay zone district. There's actually 8 parcels that make up this site, and the common address is 2613 and 2829 Allen Road for a couple of the parcels. As you can see from the zoning map, the site is on the north, bounded by the Homecoming subdivision, which is zoned a PUD. On the east, that'd be to the right of the site, it's zoned suburban fringe. And to the south and the west, in the northwest, it's zoned I-1 and I-2. It's bounded on its north side by Allen Road and on its west side by Collins Road. The uses around this site, next slide, please. Lost my slide. Dale, are you still there?
Did we lose Dale? You're muted, Dale. Dale, if you can hear us, we cannot hear you, or we've lost your slide.
Mr. President, may be something to do with what it looks to me like a pretty terrific storm has moved in.
Yeah, I'm hearing it.
Yeah, let's try. Can you share yours? We have an idea here that perhaps we can share our content.
Harold and Dana Dietrich.
Has left the meeting.
There you go.
Can you see it, Mr. Chairman?
I can.
Oh, terrific. Thank you. So the next slide, or the slide that's up there now, it just outlines what the I-1 district is for, and it's for assembling, manufacturing, and warehousing, but all that has to be conducted inside so that noise, odor, and dust and glare and all working operations have to be within an enclosed structure. This district under the Greenwood Ordinance is designed to act as a transitional use, so a use between heavier industrial districts and less intensive uses such as commercial or residential. And we think that this site, being bordered on the north by residential and being bordered on the south by industrial and on the northwest by a heavier industrial, I think the site fits into that definition, that it is a site that is a transitional site, and all of the uses on the site would remain, and all operations would be conducted indoors. Next slide, please. Thank you. So you can see the site is highlighted there in green, and then you can see it to the north is the Homecoming subdivision. There's Allen Road that borders the whole site along the north. Collins Road borders the site along its west. And you can see how the area is filling in with other I-1 industrial uses. A couple of them are labeled. And this site on its southern border is bordered by QCD and the Pitney Bowes building right alongside it. Next slide, please. That's a picture, recent photograph of the north edge of the site along Allen Road. As you can see, there's the Homecoming is off to the left side of that photograph. There's a berm with some evergreen trees along it. Next slide, please. That's the view along Allen Road looking north. And you can see that there are industrial uses fairly close to the Homecoming neighborhood. Those are zoned I-2. Our proposed zoning is I-1. And I'll get to we have a lot more separation proposed in this development than what's to the west of Homecoming. Next slide, please. That's looking south on Allen Road towards the Pitney Bowes building and the QCD building. We would also propose to have a berm along that frontage of the road. And in a minute, I'll show you an exhibit that will show our berms on our north boundary, our east boundary, and our west boundary. Which will be landscaped to separate this use from the uses around us. Next slide, please. That's a example of the type of building that's being built in this area, the QCD building. That's a new building that's just right south of this border of this site. Next slide, please. So, members of the commission, this is no doubt about a changing area. In 2005, I think you can count the buildings in that aerial photograph, and there was about 7 industrial commercial buildings in this photograph. The next slide, please. In 2015, that picture is from 2015. I think the count is approximately 21 buildings. So in 2020. So in a 15-year period from 2005 to 2020, the 7 buildings went to about 21 buildings. It's just an area that has definitely transformed from an agricultural area to a predominantly light industrial area. The next slide, please. In a minute, I'm going to get to a slide that shows how we propose to screen and buffer our uses from our residential neighbors to the north. And I wanted to show the Plan Commission that ours is quite a bit different than what is in existence now. So that site, this slide shows an I-2, I-1 site, and it is about 60 feet from the border of the houses on the west end of Homecoming. So that picture right there shows Allen Road in the bottom, and then that's looking north where there's existing building. We think we can do our site in a better, more neighborly fashion with the separation we're proposing, and I'll show that in a minute. Next slide, please. So there's a distance from the edge of Homecoming to the edge of this site, and there's even a further distance from where any buildings would be. I just used this to show there's about 100 feet of right-of-way between the south edge of the Homecoming lots and the edge of our property. And you can see from that slide, I mentioned that there was evergreen trees along the south side of Homecoming, and there's a berm. And what we are going to propose and have agreed to via commitment that I'll get to in a minute is to propose a 120-foot wide buffer area, setback area, in addition to that 100-foot right-of-way. And what that means, members of the Plan Commission, is that our buildings, instead of being about 60 feet away from neighboring residents at Homecoming, our closest building would be over on the approximately 300 feet or a football field away from at the houses on the south side of Homecoming. Next slide, please. And our berm that we would propose, could we go back one, please? Thank you. And one more. Go forward, please. Forward? Forward. Okay. Yeah, and there's one in between this we missed. But what I'm showing here is a zoning exhibit, members of the commission, that show that 120-foot wide setback that that I just mentioned. So our buildings would be set back behind that. And in between those houses at Homecoming on the north end, you're right, it's one more. And on the north end, I'm sorry, David, go back. I apologize. We're doing our best here. In between the houses and the north end, there would be a 120-foot wide setback area with a 12-foot tall landscape berm. The staff had asked us to commit to an 8-foot tall berm, and as we looked at that, we think a 12-foot tall landscape berm will do a better job of screening these uses from our neighbors to the north. In addition, we would put a 50-foot wide setback over on the west side. That'd be the left side of that exhibit, and it would have a 6-foot tall landscape berm, and then we'd have a 45-foot wide setback on the east side, and that would have a 6-foot tall landscape berm. So this property on its east, north, and west sides would be ringed with berms that would range from 6 feet tall to 12 feet tall, and they would all be landscaped on top of them. In addition, members of the commission, if you look at the top of this, where we join our residential neighbors, understandably, they were concerned about truck traffic coming in off of Allen Road. We would prohibit truck traffic by our commitments from using those 2 entrances into that site, and we would limit that only to passenger vehicles or emergency vehicles if necessary. But all our truck traffic would come in down, if you look down at the very left-hand corner at the southwest corner of that site, they would come in below that 50-foot wide setback area and that 6-foot tall landscape berm. Our intent of that is to reduce the impact of this light industrial rezoning on our neighbors to the north. Next slide, please. I used as an example a berm that is out on Allen Road already. That is to the west of the site. And we believe that that berm is between 5 and 8 feet tall. Our berms would be 6 feet on the east and west side of the minimum and 12 feet separating our neighbors. So it would be considerably higher than the berm that's just down the street and considerably higher than the berm that's on the, I believe they call it the Amazon building to the west of us. Ours would be of a different magnitude and provide much more screening as part of our zoning commitments. Next slide, please. So in getting into the commitments, what we would propose, like we did in the last case, we would propose that the commitments, and I won't go through them, read them each by word for word, but we limited our building materials to brick and masonry materials with different textures and different colors. So the commission would not be looking at an all metal warehouse kind of building. Not that there's anything wrong with that. We just don't think that's an appropriate architectural design for this site. And the next slide, please. There would be no outside storage between an established building line and the right-of-way of any street. So what that means is there's no outside storage we're going to allow in that, and there's going to be no outside storage of any kind between our building and our neighbors to the north. In addition, any trash enclosures that we would build and trash compactors on this site would have to have the same material, exterior material, that we build the buildings with, and so they would be complementary and would match the architectural materials used of the primary buildings. Next slide, please. We would institute and commit to the same lighting commitments that we agreed to in the other site to reduce the effect of lighting along our neighbors. And we've outlined those several commitments under 2.7. And those would be both pole lights and wall pack light fixtures. And in fact, all exterior lighting would be subject to these commitments. Next slide, please. And then signage would also be the same commitment that we would made in the last case. But the main new commitments that are now in front of this Plan Commission that we've would enter into if this zoning is approved would be there would be a setback of 120 feet along the northern border with a landscape berm of 12 feet in height, and that would be installed within such setback. And there'd be a setback of 45 feet along the eastern border of the site, and within that setback there'd be a landscape berm of 6 feet tall, and so it'd be 6 feet tall plus landscaping on top of it. And then a setback of 50 feet along the western border, that would be along Allen Road, and I'm sorry, along Collins Road, and that would have a landscape berm of approximately 6 feet tall, minimum of 6 feet tall in that area. We would then eliminate access points along Allen Road. We would eliminate truck traffic and limit that to automobile traffic and only emergency service. Our truck trailers and tractor trailers would come in at the southwest portion of the site along Collins and not on Allen Road. I mentioned roadway improvements. Graham Road would be milled and resurfaced from Allen Road north to Main Street as part of this rezoning. Next slide, please. This slide is the one you've already seen, members of the commission, in the last hearing. It outlines the approximately $4 million worth of roadway improvements and right-of-way dedication and new roadways that have been committed to and actually performed and installed by this developer, along with the improvements to the signalization areas. And we've made an additional commitment as part of these cases to mill and resurface the roadway between Main and Allen that's shown in the green area on this slide. Next slide, please. Members of the commission, in summary, this I-1 zoning we believe is compatible and consistent with the existing zoning to the west and south and northwest of this site. We also respectfully suggest that a 120-foot wide buffer, which is substantially greater, I think 2.5 times greater than what your ordinance would require, along our northern border. If we put that buffer in there and then we install a 12-foot tall landscape berm, I mean, you think about it, that berm is taller by a couple feet than a basketball goal. That's a sizable berm. And if we install that and landscape that between our buildings and Allen Road, we think that with the separation of the right-of-way and the existing evergreen trees along the border of Homecoming, we think that produces a very effective screen. We will eliminate trucks access from the site to Allen Road. This rezoning would result in an enormous increase in property taxes generated by this site. It's on the order of a few $1,000s a year. Property taxes are generated now, and we believe it would be over $1 million a year in property taxes once the site is fully developed. I believe the staff has made a favorable recommendation of this petition, subject to several commitments. I think about 8 of them. We have agreed to all of the staff's requested commitments. And lastly, the petitioner has invested in Greenwood, substantially invested in Greenwood and offsite roadway improvements. And this site, along with the other site, they're committing to invest an additional over $1 million and to dedicate a 2-acre site to Greenwood for a new fire station. Thank you for your time this evening.
Has joined the meeting.
I apologize for the slight glitch with the presentation, but I think we got it all in. Thank you for your time.
No problem. All right, for remonstrators, before you start here, I'm sure there's probably several, and I would ask that you use the time wisely and not repeat what a fellow remonstrator might have said, because we'll have that in the notes, and we'll try and give everybody a chance to speak. So having said that, anybody to speak against this or for it, either way, please state your name and address and be sworn in. And that's the way we'll do it for all remonstrators.
This is Doug Bigelow.
Denart.
Go ahead.
Patrick Denart. I live at 712 Fireside Drive.
Hey, do you swear under penalties for perjury the testimony I'm about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
It is.
Thank you.
Repeat your name again, please.
Patrick Denart.
Got it. Thank you.
So I live at 712 Fireside Drive in University Park. I was on for the last one as well. I supported the last piece. However, on this one, I simply don't. As I mentioned earlier, I have pretty good knowledge of this land. I run almost every morning out there, I observe the traffic at various times of the day and evening. And to start off with, the infrastructure just isn't there. Specifically, Allen Road and Collins Road, we're already behind trying to develop this. And any previous attempts that the city or the developers attempted to push truck traffic through different avenues, I've heard various theories on pushing them, keeping the truck traffic on Allen Road or correction, on Graham and off of Allen, simply hasn't worked.
Has joined the meeting.
I at least 2 to 3 times a week, I see traffic or semi-traffic parked either on the side of Allen, the side of Graham, or on the side of Collins Road. And it just, to me, it doesn't make sense, because we have Road Ranger off Main Street, and we have two to three other truck plazas down in New Whiteland, but it doesn't make sense. But we still have trucks blocking either lanes of traffic, or they're parked on the side of the road and they're causing hazards to the people who live in the University Park. That's to start that off with. Secondly, the second motion I'd like to make to the committee is I don't see a need for this development at this time. there's no doubt this land is going to come up for debate again. And I've been talking to members of my community, and that this is the first time we've debated this piece. That property is a prime piece of real estate the city's going to try to develop. But as you drive around the city, I ask you guys to look around at the development sites that are present. If you drive down Graham from Main Street to County Line, almost every site you see has open zoning pieces. I don't know why we'd be willing to sacrifice this prime piece of real estate when there's plenty of sites that have buildings open, or sites that are available for development that we haven't moved on yet. So I think we're putting a piece of real estate up for development that has a better piece in the city's future. Secondly, I really fear for the safety of the members of the community in University Park, simply because of the traffic that goes down there, as well as I fear for our home values. We bought, all of us own, or at least I own a home in University Park, and I shudder to feel what happens in the value of my home when you put an industrial site, no matter how tall the berm is, how far you are off the side of the road, you put a warehouse next to you. This housing development is going to lose value. That's all there is to it. And there's just I don't see it yet. I don't see any way right now to funnel all that traffic either to Worthville Road or back to Maine with the infrastructure we have in place. So at this time, I ask the committee to vote no on this one until we can until we can develop a better means to keep that traffic away from University Park. It's already a mess. I run out there every day. I do appreciate the improvements they've made in those trails, because it is nice not having to run on the side of the road. And I've actually been able to run all the way back into 31 into downtown using the improvements in the roads, but we're not there yet. And I think the city would be foolish and wasting a key developmental opportunity in the future if we let this site be rezoned. And that's all I have at this time.
Kelly Higgins, homeowner at Homecoming,
has joined the meeting.
Hello, my name's Mike Reed. I'd like to add to that. I'm already sworn in.
Who is this?
I'm sorry, your name is?
Mike Reed, and I am already sworn in from the previous.
That was the last petition. You need to be sworn in again, please.
Okay.
Do you swear under penalties for perjury the testimony I'm about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr.
So
Reed.
I met with a representative from Ryan Homes, the sole builder in Homecoming at this point, and learned that this time next year there'll be about 930 homes when the neighborhood is complete. Because of the cultural diversity of our wonderful neighborhood, Homecoming, there is much larger than average number of occupants per house, somewhere above 6 or more per house. And a large number of those are children and elderly. 6 years ago, when there was about 500 or 600 homes, it took 4 school buses just to pick up the elementary school kids for just the public school. So there is hundreds and hundreds of kids, and there's a lot of elderly. They will be breathing in all of the fumes from those hundreds of employees going to these warehouses and the hundreds of diesel trucks going to these warehouses. We just talked about a petition for 12 acres to be rezoned for additional warehouse space, or what's called light industrial. And we're talking about 2 acres shy of 100 acres right next to our homes. Most of these homes are 3,000 to 4,000 square feet. Most of them are 2 stories, meaning that they'll be looking into the parking lots and the trucks and the warehouses. So a 12-foot berm will not make a big difference to people when they're trying to sleep with the noise of trucks rolling in and out, of employees rolling in and out. There's the pollution problem, there's the noise problem. The traffic problem could be alleviated by widening Allen Road and Collins Road, but then you just have additional traffic competing with the school buses and the nearly 1,000, nearly 4,000 to 5,000 residents currently living in Homecoming. The city of Greenwood has some excellent property. In addition to the property that was just voted to be rezoned, there's property north of Main Street on both sides of Graham Road that already has a number of warehouses. Cummings is about to build up there just south of County Line Road, and there's hundreds of acres left to be developed. The whole point of zoning laws is one of the main points is to protect residential areas from being engulfed by industrial or commercial properties, to create buffer zones, green belts. We would love to see this property developed for homes, schools, churches. We would love to see more businesses like Cummings and Nestle and Amazon built, but we don't want any more construction north of Collins Road. We weren't happy with the number of warehouses that were put in already north of Collins Road, but at least there is a separation with our neighborhood, and we'd like to see that separation protected, and if anything, more homes brought in, but not more warehouses until Homecoming and its 5,000 residents are surrounded on two sides by industrial development. And so that's why I would ask the council to vote as they did before against this rezoning and allow it to be developed, either remain as agriculture or in the future be developed as residential.
Okay.
This is Doug Bumbelow, and I live at 2932 Treehouse Pass, Greenwood 46143.
Okay, do you swear under penalties for perjury the testimony I'm about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you.
My comment has to do with the fact that you talk about the 120-foot back and all that stuff. I can tell you now that the stuff west of Homecoming, I'm well further than that from that park, and I can hear it, and the lighting from it is still disruptive. It's with their bright, crazy lights. So, I don't really buy that your 120-foot back from that area is going to protect us, from the noise pollution and light pollution and everything else, in addition to the terrible traffic that we already have today that nobody wants to fix. And that's all I had to say.
Hi.
This is David Staggers. I'm at 2963 Hearthside Drive, Greenwood.
And David, do you swear under penalties for perjury the testimony I'm about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Thank you.
I just have a couple of comments here just to elaborate on what's already been said. Number one, I don't understand the reason why we need to have further development here at this particular point in time. Right now, we don't understand what the impact is going to be with the FedEx facility when it becomes fully operational. Has already been commented. There's enough traffic going on right now, and when the FedEx facility becomes fully operational, we can expect to see the traffic truck traffic and other traffic to increase considerably, considering the size of the facility and considering its usage. Secondly, I wanted to make the commission aware of the fact that within Greenwood, and this is all I could do by a survey that I did visually, is right now there are 696,682 square feet available of open warehouse space. And this is found primarily off of Graham Road, north of Main Street. So I'm not quite sure if I understand the need for another warehouse to be built when we have almost 700,000 square feet of warehouse space currently available for occupancy. Secondly, there was an ordinance passed in 2017, Ordinance 17-38. This was for GLO properties, and this is for the current warehouses that were being built and have been built for Amazon and for FedEx and for Pitney Bowl. And one of the arguments that was made when they presented this was in slide 6. One of the arguments they made for approval was the distance of the development from Homecoming, and this distance that they included was the site that they now want to have have the zoning changed on that. And I have a concern about that because I did a review of a study that was done in the Netherlands. This is a study that was done in published in 2009. The impact of industrial sites on residential property values. And this is the conclusion that they made. They said, our results clearly show that the presence of an industrial site has a statistically significant negative effect on the value of residential properties. Housing prices rise with increasing distance to its nearest industrial site. So what they were saying here is that houses that are close to an industrial site see a reduction in property values, but as you move away from the site, the values increase. Clearly, what we see here with the plan to have this particular site rezoned is going to have an impact on property values. And let's face facts. Greenwood is not an industrial community. Greenwood is a bedroom community, and we need to take that into account as a planning commission to preserve that characteristic of Greenwood as being that type of community and not allow for industrial sites to impinge upon that reputation, particularly with Homecoming, who's been in existence for at least 20 years. So I urge the commission to reject this proposal and tonight.
Okay. We've got about 7 more minutes.
This is Jeevan Buwal, 2946 Holiday Way, Greenwood, Indiana, 46143.
Do you swear under penalties for perjury the test I'm about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
I just want to comment on the planning commission. I mean, you guys have literally given out zonings, but look at the size of the FedEx warehouse and you're still building single lane road. Collin Road is a single lane road. Graham Road is a single lane road. I mean, how would you even justify giving more commercial zoning with the kind of infrastructure you provide along with it? I mean, the roads, they're all torn up and we're constantly just pouring tar over tar just to fix the patches in the road. I mean, the infrastructure is just not there to support more commercial zoning. I mean, and that's only being Amazon and Pitney Bowes being fully functional. Just imagine the other warehouses once they're up and running and being functional. And we still have single lane roads, which is Collins Road and Graham Road. I mean, it's just horrible. I mean, we had a good chance to make Collins Roads a double lane highway and we just messed it up. I mean, it's a single lane road. And that'll be it for me. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
Trent Steffes, 2944 Seasons Drive, Greenwood, Indiana.
Do you swear under penalties for perjury the test I'm about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you.
State your name again, please.
Trent Steffes.
Okay.
I guess I kind of have just some questions to pose to the petitioner. I do appreciate the petitioner's investment into the infrastructure that he mentioned in the last point. And the question would be, you know, they talk about resurfacing from, I think, Allen to Main on Graham. Would there be any infrastructure investment in Allen Road to potentially widen it, as that's obviously a concern? And then what would be done to truly restrict truck traffic away from Allen Road? And lastly, even passenger vehicle traffic, if we're really talking about 98 acres of development, is going to be significant on Allen Road. So is there a way, would they commit as well to trying to divert that traffic through an additional cutout through that property?
Okay. We'll have Mr. Tui address those in a minute. Anyone else? All right, Mr. Tui. I'm sorry.
My name's Pam Chase. My address is 756 Timeless Run in Greenwood.
Pam, do you swear under penalties for perjury the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Thank you.
My first question is, and I'm doing this all by audio. I do not have the maps and all. And Dale, you did send that to me, and I've not had a chance to look at it yet. But how far east does this property go? Does it go all the way to Griffith? And then Patrick, and I did not catch his last name, was pretty much everything he said I agreed with on that part. The traffic, I also am a runner, and running through there with all that construction, you have to be extremely careful. I just don't think that Greenwood needs more of the warehouses. There's plenty, and it has been said, there's plenty north on Graham. I guess I just don't know why it has to be this close to the housing. When we bought in here 15 years ago, we were told by, for Homecoming that the property there on that you're speaking of, surrounded by Collins and Allen and Griffith, would remain agriculture. So we're very concerned that it would be changing. That's why we chose to live here in Greenwood. And as much as, I like it here, it's a family community. It's a family town. It's not warehouses.
Chris Higgins, 2892 Welcome Way, Greenwood, Indiana, 46143.
And do you swear under penalties for
Has
perjury
joined the
the
meeting.
testimony about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Thank you.
I would like to mirror a lot and echo a lot of my neighbors' concerns with the development, but I would also like to add an additional concern, one that is very personal to my wife and I, and that is with all this increased truck traffic coupled with the increased bus traffic from schools, I am extremely concerned. We are creating a fueled mixture of disaster. I don't know how many times I have been going west on Allen Road, coming to the intersection at Graham, and then having to back up to allow the semis to come through. We simply don't have the infrastructure in place to support additional industrial development. This is a poor location for further industrial development. It's poor in the sense of home values, it is poor in the sense of safety, and it is poor in the sense of just creating a sense of community. All we have seen is development, and we've seen our roads degrade in quality from the additional truck traffic, and we've seen the general quality of life within our neighborhood become more stressful because we're having to navigate roads for the large machinery and trucks that these properties and these industries are wanting to use in their business. And I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Okay, we've used about 20 minutes, so I'm going to give 2 more minutes to anybody else that wants to speak. All right, seeing none. Mr. Toohey, you have 5 minutes to rebuttal. Mr. Toohey, you might be on mute.
Now, can you hear me?
Yep, we can. If we could get Mr. Duncan to take his screen off, that would probably help.
Actually, we'll be putting up some slides if that's okay with the president.
That's fine. Then go ahead.
So to start off, I appreciate the neighbors' thoughts and their comments. I would note that this site is an empty current farm field. And in the staff report, the staff states that the staff agrees that the I-65 Worsville Road interchange land use plan proposed this area to be as multifamily and single family uses. And it's more likely to me that it would be a multifamily use, members of the commission, that would come onto a 98-acre site that has industrial to the west and to the south of it as exists now. And there's nothing wrong with multifamily, but if you would use a low density of multifamily uses, say 8 to 10 units to the acre on a 98-acre site, you would have several hundred apartments on that site, and that would generate much more traffic and much more congestion than an industrial site. So that would be my first answer to a number of commentators that said this isn't the right use. I would respectfully disagree that this use is defined as a transitional use, and this site is a transitional site between single family to the north and industrial to the south and to the west and the north. Let's go, Mr. Duncan, to slide 9, please. Okay. So slide 9, members of the commission, showed that in 2005, this was mostly agricultural. However, there was some industrial up there to the left of where it says site. And you can see to the right of that, that's where Homecoming was coming in. So Homecoming was being built with the knowledge that there was industrial right on its border. And I don't believe that has adversely impacted the values of Homecoming. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that someone testified there's soon to be 900 homes in there. My point about that is, if you go to slide 10, please. So even though there's been this extraordinary development of industrial type properties all around the west and south sides of Homecoming, as shown on that slide, the southwest side, it has continued to grow, and it sounds to me like it's grown at a pretty impressive rate. My point about that is, even when the industrial developments were right on the borders of Homecoming, it continued to grow. This site, it's not going to be a farm. It's not practical to bring combines and tractors and things like that into that site and farm beans. It was at one time, but you can see from the march of progress from 2005 to 2020, it's a site that's natural border separating it from residences is Allen Road, and it's a transitional use. We have certainly tried to mitigate that use with this berm, this very tall berm, and this landscaping. And one gentleman asked, how are you going to assure that truck traffic does not come in off of Allen Road? Well, the way to do that would be to design our site. We've made the commitment that it won't use it. So now we have to design our site so that when truck traffic, the only way it can get to its destination on the site is to come in off of Collins Road. If it comes in off of Allen Road, it can't get to where it's got to be, to its loading docks or wherever its parking areas are. That's going to be just for passenger traffic. So we can add that as a commitment that in order to enforce that, we'll structure our site so that truck traffic can't get back to where it needs to be if it comes in off of Allen Road. Another remonstrator said, how will you justify giving more commercial zoning without new roads? Well, we've been big contributors, benefactors for the improvements of roadways around this area, and continue to work with the Greenwood and its engineer, Mr. Johnston. And if, as one person said, if there needs to be a dedication of some additional right-of-way at our northwest corner to accommodate turning, we're fine with that. We can back that berm up. We'll let Mr. Johnston and his engineering department through traffic studies tell us what needs to be done. And we're in here for the long term and have made a very significant capital investment in this area. Another gentleman mentioned that there was hundreds of thousands of feet of empty warehouse space. Members of the commission, all of the GLA warehouses are full or will be full in this area. If they're not full now, it's just because they haven't moved in. But we have no empty warehouse space. And so that's just a fact that doesn't apply to the GLA area. The one gentleman asked for homes and schools and churches, or for the property remain as agricultural. And I appreciate that. But it's just not likely that you're going to have agricultural uses right next door to industrial uses like we have. And yet we've got this separation by this right of way along Allen Road, and we're instituting a significant separation on our site. As I said, our buildings will be 300 feet plus or minus from homes. There are already buildings, industrial buildings, about 60 feet from homes. So we're going to be 5 times that distance. That will mitigate the effects of that industrial use. The last point is the comprehensive plan calls for this area to be used as multifamily or single family houses. The site is most likely a multifamily site as opposed to a single family site, given the other uses, if it was going to be residential. That would create more impact on traffic. It would create much more impact on the school system, whereas this site has no impact on the school system in terms of adding students, but has an enormous positive impact on the school system's budget because of the significant increase in the tax base that would be generated from this site. For those reasons, along with the reasons outlined in the staff report, which continues to recommend approval, we would respectfully request your favorable consideration of this petition. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Mr. Tui used about 7 or 8 minutes. So I'll give that same benefit to the remonstrators for any rebuttal that they might have. Again, all you need to do is repeat your name and go from there. So again, about 7 or 8 minutes.
Robert Chase, 756 Timeless Run, Greenwood, 46143.
What was that?
What, I'm sorry,
Chase.
Again?
Robert Chase.
Okay, so you didn't speak the first time around?
Yes.
You did speak the first time around?
No, I did not.
Okay, so we need to get you sworn in.
Okay. Do you swear under penalties for perjury the testimony I'm about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you.
I'd like to address a couple of points.
Ken Trout has left the meeting.
The vast majority of the houses in Homecoming are a very great distance away from the warehouses that were already here. I can look out my front window right now and see where you're going to build warehouses. Right now, I see a very good-looking farm field full of corn, fully actively farmed each year that we've been here. 2, we were told 15 years ago approximately, before we decided to build here, that would always be either agricultural or families, either multifamily or single-family housing. 3rd, there is a ton of land that is not next to any housing. It's one thing to see a housing addition go up and there's already warehouses there and you make your decision based on knowing that. When we bought, we did not think we would ever look out our window and see warehouses. This is my home. This is not someplace I bought to invest in. This is where I plan to live out the rest of my days, actually. And I've got shrubs and trees named for each of my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I don't want to see the property values go down to the point where I have to move. Thank you very much for your time.
This is Doug Bumbalo. I spoke earlier.
Yes.
You did say it's not likely that you'd have agriculture next to the I-1, but we have that today in Taylor Farms. They've been there, since I can remember, and they're right there next to it. So it's not implausible to think that it can't happen, because that cornfield you're talking about has been there since I moved into the area. It's been farmed every year. My other thing is multifamily housing or single family housing, does that tax base go towards Whiteland School District? Because I'm under the impression that none of this I-1, none of that tax base goes to supports any of the school district that you're building in, that it goes back to Greenwood.
I'll address that in a minute. Go ahead.
And that's basically all I had.
Okay.
Mike
Anyone else?
Reed.
Okay,
Mike
Mr. Reed. Go ahead.
In addition to all these points, I just would like to address the council and say and ask you, please do not sacrifice the quality of life that we have in Homecoming for the possible revenue that might come in from warehouses and 98 acres of warehouses. We are committed to, if this rezoning passes, we are committed to take it to the state legislature and higher. We're committed to take it to the press. We're committed to do whatever it takes to protect our children and our property values and our quality of life. And with all the other options out there to the city of Greenwood, we would ask you to reject this proposal and leave that 98 acre as agriculture or as future residential development, and allow there to continue to be a buffer zone between residents and industrial of what's left of it. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yep, this is Pat Denard again.
Go ahead.
I would invite the members of the city commission. I would invite them to actually come out to University Park. Specifically, we talked about transitional zoning. If we go north of Main Street, we can actually see another part of development on the north side of Main Street that has duplexes and that actually has a different type of development than we have single-family homes inside University Park. Mr. Pui is simply off base when he says a warehouse district of 98 acres across a right-of-way is a transitional zone. He's simply off base, and it's very clear where he's going with this. He's representing one person, one interest alone. For the members of the community where I live, where my kids live, which we're very proud to live, I would like to see either a residential or quite literally, I'd like to see this piece just denied and save that piece of property until the city does a deep study of what's right for that development. I have no doubt that someday, whether it be in 5 years or in 20 years, that property will likely develop. I don't think we've seen enough studies, whether it be traffic, whether it be use, or any kind of studies at all presented, other than by one side showing that yes, everything they developed previously is built or is fully utilized. He's showing one side of the story, and I asked the commission to deny this request and save this property for the future of the city. That's all I got.
Okay. We got about a minute left. Anybody else?
Chris Higgins from, I spoke earlier.
Okay.
I would like to pose this question to the commission as you're considering your vote. If your house was along Allen Road after that building and the industry was developed, would you honestly consider purchasing that home? Would you honestly consider having your backyard view a truck parking lot with lights and sound? And I would also invite members of the commission, if they like, to come visit my home. You have my address. Come sit on my back patio and listen to the noise that we already have from trucks entering in and out of parking lots. I also would invite you to come to my home and see the light pollution that is currently from that we receive from the west side of Homecoming. Now, this would pose, we are proposing that this not only will come from the west side, but from the south side of Homecoming. Again, I ask the commission to please ask the question, would you honestly purchase a home where right across the street there was a warehouse with bright lights and loud trucks?
Okay. About 30 seconds. Anybody else?
This is David Staggers, and I had already spoken before. I would urge the commission to reject this proposal. As you recall, 1 year ago, same thing was proposed and rejected by the city council, and the situation in this area has actually gotten worse rather than better since 1 year ago. And so I would urge us not to go forward with this.
Okay. With that, I'll have to close the public hearing. And I will open it up for the questions and comments from the commissioners. But first, I want to verify the tax situation that was asked. And anybody in the city, I'm looking for your help. Is this still in a TIF district?
That's my understanding.
So it's still TIF. Okay, so at this point, all the tax revenue does go to the city of Greenwood.
Well, the way TIF works is the tax goes to whatever taxing units are in there. There would be a school corporation that gets a portion of it. The city would get a portion of it. And there's always a base tax that is paid that would go out to the school corporation. But as the property is developed and the value increases, that is captured and then goes into the TIF. So
Gotcha.
the school would still get the base tax, but as it's developed, the increase is captured for a period of time.
Okay. All right. With that, I'll open it up to the commissioners. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, so I've got some questions for Mr. Tui.
Go ahead.
We've seen, as was mentioned before, we've seen an attempt to rezone this property to I-1. I believe it was less than a year ago. And can someone remind me? I believe that we gave this an unfavorable recommendation last time that this was put in front of us. Taking that in mind, what differentiates this project from the project that we saw before that was denied by? I believe that it went to the city council and was denied at the city council.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for your question. And not to correct you, but actually the Plan Commission gave a favorable recommendation. I believe the vote was 6-2, if I remember correctly, for this. And there is quite a bit of difference here. In the before case, we didn't have this setback, these berms. We didn't have commitments about keeping truck traffic off of Allen Road. We didn't have a screening like we've shown in this plan. And we didn't have that list of commitments that the staff asked us to make as part of its staff report. So there is quite a bit of difference between the two petitions because before there could have been the buildings much closer to our neighbors, and our setbacks greatly exceed the development standards of the I-1 district. So I would respectfully suggest that it's a different petition than what was before you before, and it was, I believe, recommended for approval on a 6-2 vote.
Yes, thank you. And it was, so thank you for correcting me on that. It was recommended for approval on a 6-2 vote, and it was denied at the city council afterwards.
I agree with you. Okay.
And then last time this came before us, I remember the neighbors expressing interest in multifamily development in this property. Very heavily expressed some interest in that. Since the failure to rezone last time, has this property, to your knowledge, been marketed with that in mind?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry, I just don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Mrs. Coons? Ms. Coons, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Kohler. As usual, here's your reminder that when you are rendering a recommendation to the Common Council on this proposal for rezoning, you are to pay reasonable regard to the following criteria. 1, comprehensive plan. 2, the current conditions and the character of the current structures and uses in each district. 3, the most desirable use for which the land in each district is adapted. 4, the conservation of property values throughout Greenwood. And 5, responsible development and growth.
Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion. One's been prepared. Anyone?
Trent, this is Daniel.
Yes.
I move that the petition for a zone map change to remove approximately 98.866 acres located at the southeast corner of Allen and Collins Roads within the city of Greenwood, Johnson County, Indiana, from the South I-65/Horseville Overlay Zone District and rezone it from AG agricultural use and SF suburban fringe use to I-1 industrial light use as set forth therein, receive a favorable recommendation from this commission to the Greenwood Common Council, and that the same be certified to the Greenwood Common Council in the form presented with the following commitments as presented by the petitioner.
Does that include also the staff recommendations that are recommended?
Yes.
And staff recommendations as well.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Johnston, second by Monica, for a favorable recommendation. All those in favor, I'll take roll. Or, Mr. Shell still with us, or did he leave? Because I don't see him up. So we've got 7, I believe. Again, I'll ask one more. Mr. Shell with us? All right. Mr. Dine? An aye?
Yes.
Okay. Monica?
Aye.
Mr. Smith? Mr. Smith?
Nay.
Okay, Mr. Walker's not here. Ms. Gardner?
I have to say nay.
Mr. Schrader?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Mr. Johnston?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Motion carries 5-2.
But you still have a chance. Last time.
This will go before the city council. You know when the first reading will be on that, Ms. Coons?
It should be on the council's agenda under an item as notice of intent to consider at its meeting on August 17th.
Okay. That'll be, that's their notification, correct?
Correct.
I'm sorry, Ms. Coons, I did not hear that.
It will be on the Common Council agenda on Monday, August 17th as an item that is under the notice of intent to consider.
Thank you very much, members of the commission, for your time this evening.
Yep, you're welcome. Any new business from the floor? Seeing none, any announcements? All right. Take a motion to adjourn.
Let's do it.
Has left the meeting.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Has left the meeting.